Good evening, SLT family. Yes, we are back with another edition. We have a phenomenal queen that is a part of our show on this evening. Miss Yvette Jones is a native of Virginia. She is a marriage and family counselor and founder of the Freedom Chain Ministries. Jones specializes in marriage and family counseling. She is an alumni of Liberty University and holds an MA in marriage and family counseling, a BS degree in psychology with a concentration in Christian counseling. And it's not done yet. She also has an AAS degree in administration of criminal justice. She is a member of the American Association of Christian Counselors. It's so much more to talk about in her bio, and we're going to go into that throughout this whole segment. But Miss Jones, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, take us through the journey. I mean, you have a lot of credentials behind your name. What set you on a pathway to want to become a marriage and family counselor?
Well, the credentials behind my name, first of all, are just some of the things that I achieved through life. But the real Yvette is what's here today. And basically, finding my way through life, growing up in a family where there were educators, where there was, some apparent dysfunction, even in the middle of education being the higher status of learning. I began
Mhm.
to search for myself, basically. And on that,
Mhm.
in that path, I began to grow closer in my relationship with God. I began to find out who I am, and then I began to have an interest in helping other people, that may not be
Mhm.
navigating through life with struggles, like myself. So that's what
Mhm.
led me on this path that I'm on right now.
Wow, I tell you. I mean, but it goes further. You have a psychology degree. Talk about the criminal justice. Why did you want to flow in that arena?
Criminal justice has always been one of my main concerns. Basically, the ironic part about it is when I went into college, my freshman year was actually at Averett College at that time in Danville, Virginia. I thought growing up in a family background with education that I wanted to become a teacher. And because
Mm.
I grew up with my own physical challenges of being born with Blount's disease, which is basically
Mhm.
being an extreme deformity of the legs and wearing braces for over
Mhm.
13 years, I thought I wanted to
Mhm.
work with special needs children until it got to the point where I had to do my in class observation. And I came home and I told my mom, nah, I don't think that's it for me. So, I began to struggle trying to find my path. On that path, it led me to my own prison experience.
Mhm.
And during that time was when I began to fight for justice, not for myself, but began to fight for justice within those prison walls. And I began to understand, hey, I've been in a prison of my own for so long. So I wanted to learn more about the system, and I also wanted to be able to give back to the criminal justice system. So that is where I began my journey as, in the criminal justice. And alongside of that, I've always been interested in the mindset of a
Mhm.
person, understanding perception and what that really is. So basically, getting to the soul of a person, after we take off the layers of what we
Mhm.
see, I've always
Mhm.
been intrigued of knowing who you really are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because I know a part of your bio it says you're committed to building the bridge between communication and healthy relationships. Talk about that. How do we build a bridge? What are some steps you can share with our listening audience on how we can start building that bridge from a fundamental standpoint?
Building the bridge basically is the key to it is love, and it's going to start with any relationship is being able to understand who you are.
Mm.
If you're navigating through life and you don't understand
Mhm.
who the real you actually is, there's going to be a lot of strife, a lot of twists and turns in your life. So you've got to understand who you are and begin to love yourself. Begin to love yourself,
Mm.
and no matter what higher being you may believe in, I believe that there's one common denominator, no matter which denomination, whatever you believe in, it's going to be God. So whatever your
Mhm.
God is, you're going to have to really hone in on that relationship part, loving yourself and allowing your higher power to love you back. Before you can pick
Mm.
up and love anybody else, that is going to be the main key to a
Mm.
relationship. Mhm.
Yeah. Now, question for those that are tuned in. You are tuned into SLT, the talk, and we are talking with Miss Jones, native of Virginia, and she is a marriage and family counselor. Now, I know a snippet of the bio says the bridge between communication and healthy relationships, but what about if someone is stuck in an unhealthy relationship? Do they just stay in it and do the stick and stay method if it's unhealthy? I mean, what should a person do?
In counseling, what I have honestly a witness is that a person has to be willing to change. If you're not going to
Mm.
be patient, and if you're not going to provide a positive support system, it's going to be a difficult, it's not impossible, but it is going to be a challenge. So you're going to have to be patient in any relationship when you have that. So what I would suggest is to definitely seek someone that you can talk with and that you trust. Having a communication, being able to talk about the weak areas in your life, in your relationship, whether it's with your spouse, whether it's in, business relationship, whatever relationship you may have. I think that is one of the main keys is being able to communicate with one another and
And you
understanding
bring up
because,
a good
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You bring up a good point because relationship is not just, the dating, the love. I mean, it's business relationships, it's friendships, relationships, it's all type of
Mhm.
relationships. And so for those that are tuning in now, Miss Jones is definitely saying communication is the fundamental building block to building a healthy relationship. It goes on in her bio. It says she's adopted a hope-focused approach to help clients break barriers to freedom. So when you talk to a client and you're helping them break through barriers, what are some methods that you use?
Number one, doing assessment is that a lot of people will come with the problem being someone else's problem. So we
Mm.
have to get to the problem of your problem. That is the
Mhm.
number one challenge, especially with
Mhm.
my clients with marriage counseling. We will have the
Mm.
spouse. It's going to always say what the husband is doing and what they don't like, and vice versa. But a lot of
Mhm.
times, the ultimate root to a lot of problems is going to be the baggage that we carry into a relationship. It's our own
Mhm.
baggage. You have to own
Mhm.
you first. If you
Mhm.
don't own you first, you're going to blame everybody that's connected to you. Even that child that came out of maybe out of a relationship that did not lead to marriage, out of an
Mhm.
abusive relationship, a one night stand or a rape situation. If you don't
Mhm.
deal with yourself and unpack your baggage, it's unfair, number one, to give that baggage over to someone else and expect them to give you back what you really need to grow and be a better person.
So we have to unpack our own bag. Whatever that baggage is, we have to unpack it and not put it on another person.
That is correct. So many times when I see people, a lot of times I tell my husband I see beyond what I see. I see that
Mhm.
woman or that man carrying the bag. It's just like when we go shopping and we go to the mall and we come out with all these bags. A lot of
Mhm.
times a person is walking with nothing in their hand, and if you've got that vision that when I see as a counselor, I see your hurt. I see your guilt. I see your abandonment. I can see your shame. I see these things, the unforgiveness, and I do, I'll touch on that hopefully in a moment, but I see those things, right? And when you get to know a
Mhm.
person, you don't see that. You only see it in their behavior. And the behavior is
Mhm.
only most of the time present during a strife, during some type when they get uncomfortable about themselves is when the arguments come about or the different things. It's not really the argument that you're dealing with. It's really you're dealing with.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You definitely are saying a lot. I think I call them golden nuggets and jewels you're dropping tonight. I know another snippet in your bio. It says, and as it relates to the forgiveness piece, it says, with extensive studies in forgiveness, Jones has dedicated her career to turn the key of love into the antidote for long-lasting relationships. Forgiveness, that's huge. That's huge, and not just, on one party side, it could be both parties needed to forgive. It could have been, issues on both sides, but how do you get to a place of forgiveness? I guess for the audience that's listening, I mean, that's a common question, but what is your perspective on that?
First of all, forgiveness is what I consider one of the key ingredients to reaching a successful and even a prosperous life. Forgiveness is at the point where you have to begin with yourself. A lot of things people may not like to hear, especially as a counselor or even as myself as a friend, is that you have
Mm.
to be able to forgive yourself. I give you a good example. I grew up in a family where my stepfather was the only father that I knew. However, and it was at an early age. However, I knew that there was another part of me that existed. Now, after I went
Mm.
off to college at 24, I had a conversation with my biological father. And then when my
Mhm.
mother passed away, in 2007, he came into my life to try to have a relationship with me, and it was okay. But what I understood is that I had to forgive myself for the times when my mother said, "You look and act just like your father," but I never inquired about my father. When she said, "You're
Mm.
doing things like your father's sister," and I never inquired, well, what was she like? I never had the
Mhm.
hard conversations with my mother to be able to understand her pain and to be able to live through the absence of my father. Once I
Mm.
learned who he was not such a great man that I wanted to have a continuous relationship with. I saw some similarities, but however, what I had to do is that I had to be okay with the time that I wasted because it wasn't
Mm.
his fault. It was part of me too that I wasted the sleepless nights wondering who's the other part of my DNA. When I look in the
Mm.
mirror, I see someone else other than the family I'm living with. I had to
Mhm.
be, even in my 20s, I had to be okay with me first and forgive myself
Mhm.
for the lost time.
Mm.
And that's where
Giving
forgiveness is
yourself.
key. Yes, we
Mm.
always want others to forgive us for something that we did, but yet and still we rest with that pain deep inside of us. And we tend to grow up with that baggage I was telling you about, that other people we
Mhm.
want them to forgive us for that we never forgave ourselves for. So basically, look in the mirror, examine yourself, and be okay with you. If you're not such a great
Mhm.
person right now, you need to be okay with that person that you see in the mirror and understand that greater is going to come for you. That is not your life.
Mm.
That's not your forever.
Mhm. Mm. Wow. Wow. Now, in speaking on forgiveness, do you just continue to forgive a person that's still doing the same thing over and over again, and just stay in that situation again? Not just a romantic relationship. This could be business, friendship, or what have you.
You have oh, great question. You have to come to the realization where you are and what you're going to tolerate. A lot of times we stay in those relationships because we become complacent and they become the norm for us. Once you forgive yourself, you have to know your value. That's the next
Mm.
step. When you know your value, everything else around you, you're going to set an expectation for yourself. You're going to know
Mhm.
better. And when you know better, you do better. So there's some things that even
Mm.
though you did them then, because I have forgiven myself, I'm not a people pleaser. I'm saying this to my clients. When you forgive yourself and you become not a people pleaser, you don't become the blame game, and you know your worth,
Mhm.
who you are,
Mhm.
then your whole bar, everything you're gonna go look for, you're going to even shop different in life about life
Mm.
decisions. So
Shop
your
different in life.
poverty,
I
yes,
like that. Listen, y'all
yes.
are tuned into SLT to talk, and Miss Yvette Jones is dropping some jewels. She talking about we gonna shop different when we get to know who we are. I tell you, I mean, but listen, I want to pivot a little bit because you're an author, and we want to dive a little bit into your book. Miss Yvette Jones released her first book entitled "My Second Wind," a true story about an ex federal, and state inmate who discovers the truth that breaks the chain of bondage. Share with everybody a little bit about your book.
You said it all. If I had to say this one, it's the darkest side of my life because it was a time
Mm.
when I had finished my sophomore year in college. I came home.
Mhm.
I really did not know who I was. I was wearing every hurt, every pain, everything that anyone could consume in life. The blessing
Mm.
out of this is that even though I didn't turn to the drugs and alcohol, there were a lot of self-infliction being done to
Mhm.
myself, the pain, what I was telling you about with the forgiveness and all. So
Mhm.
as during the time of my sophomore year, before going into my junior year, I came home
Mhm.
and there, I came back and forth. I struggled through college basically because I'm still trying to find myself and what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Mhm.
But in between that time, there was a time when there was a prison experience, and it was real. It wasn't just the prison experience living out in the free world. It was being behind bars, and it was, it took 5 years of my life between federal and state prison, and it was one of, and people say, Yvette, what do you mean? It was an interesting but a blessed time in my life. I will say that.
Mhm. Mhm.
I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my family, and I learned a lot about where God was trying to lead me in my life. So
Mhm.
that's basically, it tells about the darkest parts of my life, my prison experience, and it tells how I was able to actually find the access code to freedom. So,
Mm. Wow. Wow. And I guess that really is what connects you to the outreach part of working with youth. Another snippet of your bio, it says, Ms. Jones is committed to working with ex-offenders, at-risk youth and their families to breaking barriers with resilience and reduce recidivism. So is that really what led and connect you to working with at-risk youth?
Um, my passion for at-risk youth has always been there, working with youth that may have a disadvantage one way or the other, whether they're latchkey kids or whether they're in a broken family environment. But going to
Mhm.
prison and coming home was one of the things that when I came home is one of the areas that I said, this is where I want to give back because I'm strong on education. If a child does
Mhm.
not want to go to a 4-year school or become, doctors and lawyers, I'm just firm on being informed and teaching that child something else to show them who you are and things that you think you cannot do but you can do. So I'm real
Mm.
passionate about education. I'm real passionate about kids that may have a disadvantage, whether it is learning or whether it comes from their, just their support system at home. So that did begin before prison. Now after prison,
Mhm.
when I came home, my ultimate goal is and I focus on hope because I happen to do a lot of research on the homeless community. And the one thing that I've
Mhm.
learned about the homeless community is that we don't really hear a lot of statistics about death. We don't really hear a lot of statistics about the homeless community because they live every day based on hope. Hope for a
Mm.
future, hope for the next day, hope that someone's going to come by and hope that somebody's going to give them a sandwich or give them a word of confidence. And so
Mhm.
that's what I try to do in my own life is to produce
Mhm.
that hope focused love to be able to give back and
Mm.
making sure that people when they do come home to let them know these are some of the things you need to do because you don't need to go
Right.
back there. You know what I'm saying? So, and
Mhm.
at the same
Right.
time, if they are incarcerated and you may have a lengthy sentence, be able to take that time and play that card wisely and be able to still
Mm.
you can still see you can still produce even behind those prison walls because so much of my
Yeah.
life was unfolded behind prison walls, so much
Wow.
of it.
Wow. For those of you that are tuned in now or tuned in later, listen, you want to share this link with everyone you know. We are speaking right now with Miss Yvette Jones, a powerhouse, very transparent. And this is what we need in today's society. We don't need people putting on a mask, pretending everything's perfect. We need people that's going to be raw, real, transparent, and give us some tips and tools that we can actually take in and implement. Now, I want to touch on a little bit with that last line of the sentence that I just read, reduction of recidivism. What are some things that you think that you implement in your life that you didn't go back in, and some things maybe other people can implement in their life to not, go back in? Because I have a loved one that's incarcerated, right? And when they come out, I want to be able to help and support them. So what are some things you believe help reduce recidivism?
Changing my way of life. It's just like people who
Mm.
say the new year, I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to go do this and do that. Sticking to the
Mhm.
game plan. Knowing that, you
Mm.
know what, I'm not coming back. But no, and I'm gonna be honest with you. When I walked out of the prison, when I walked out of federal prison, I said
Mhm.
this to everybody: my feelings are all that I have, and I got to find out what I'm going to do with my feelings, my emotions,
Mhm.
right? I said,
Mhm.
but if
Right.
anybody, because this is all I have are my
Mhm.
feelings, and if anybody mess with my feelings, that's the only reason why I would be back. So when I
Mm.
left out of those prison walls, I had to say, okay, Yvette, you're not coming back, and what are you going to do? When my
Mhm.
father and my mother pulled up into my hometown, I had to make a decision. And my decisions
Mm.
that I made was, listen, I am changing my people, my places, and things, because if I come back and I connect myself with the same sources, and some of it was
Mhm.
church, some of it was
Mhm.
church, because I had a relationship with God. The one thing that I noticed is that when all of the music stopped, when all of the tambourine stopped, and I was sitting in that room by myself, I had to have a conversation with my higher power, which is God. And during that
Mm.
time, I built a relationship with God. I built an understanding of who He was in my life. So I kind of had
Mhm.
separated myself from the antics of religion and to
Mm.
having a personal relationship with my Creator. So my relationship
Mm.
became more vertical when I came home.
Mhm.
So anyone that was horizontal, that was not producing any positive energy, I made a decision to shut the door on that. Now, do I have many
Mm.
friends to this day? No, because people don't understand me. Why? Because they don't understand the God in me. It's not me.
Mm.
Yvette didn't change. I had the same heart, and I was saved, Holy Ghost, sanctified, filled when I went into the prison. But when I came out, I had a relationship with the Creator, which was vertical. So there was nothing
Mm.
else that anybody could offer me if you were not going to bring positive energy in my space. So get a good support system, create a good prayer life, no matter what it is, and you have to think positive at all times. If a person is not producing any positive energy around you, and you know who you are, you're not going to stay there long. You're not going to stay in
Mm.
that situation.
I mean, it's powerful. For those of you that are just tuning in, you are tuned into SLT The Talk. We're speaking right now with Miss Yvette Jones. She was just sharing some tips and tools on how we can reduce recidivism in our community. If you have a family member, if you have a loved one, share this episode with them. Share this episode because this is a time of transparency. That's what this podcast show is all about. We don't bring on people to this show that's wearing a mask. We're bringing on people that is willing to be transparent, willing to. It's even a place of vulnerability, by putting their truth out there, and that's what's happening right now with this dialogue. So we definitely appreciate you, Miss Jones. As we continue the conversation, the book, My Second Wind. So when you wrote the book, who was your target audience in mind as you was writing the book?
I was a little angry when I started writing the book, to be honest.
Mm. Okay, yeah.
I was angry. I was angry at when I came home. I went back to college, but my father was killed in a car wreck. And a
Mhm.
few years later, my mother was diagnosed with leukemia, and my sister and I
Mm.
lost her to a battle of leukemia. So I was angry. I was in grad school. I asked
Mhm.
God, what do you want me to do? Because I could have easily gone back in those prison walls with the same activities and all.
Mhm.
I had to make a real decision. And I was angry
Mhm.
when I started writing the book. I
Mm.
was angry. I was, that's what
Mhm.
started it. I was angry. I did
Mhm.
not know how to channel the anger.
Mhm.
It soothed a lot of my pain. It created more forgiveness. And it went from there, to be honest with you. I was
Mhm.
angry at the church. I would sing.
Mm.
I sung all my life, played piano.
Mhm.
And I was just that church superstar type person where
Mhm.
the more I sung, people they were like, okay, want to sing another song. And I didn't know who God was. So when I wrote the
Mm.
book, I was angry at the church. I was angry at my
Mhm.
family. I felt like that
Mhm.
there were hidden treasures that no one ever showed me, but the treasures
Mm.
that they wanted to use for themselves. So I was, yeah,
Yeah.
basically, I was angry when I started the book.
Mm. I know I'm buying the book. For those that's listening, I'm telling you, you need to get this book. Listen, this book shares the access code to freedom and how to win through challenges. Listen, we all are going through challenges. We have faced challenges, whether it's in our personal life, business, friendship, romantic relationship. We are going to face challenges. If you're not in the challenge right now, one is coming, not speaking doom and gloom, but that's just the reality of life. And when those challenges come, what are we going to do? Listen, I'm highly recommending my second win. I know I'm going on Amazon. I know it's available on Amazon and on Miss Jones' website. And guess what? Just an easy website. Y'all can't mess it up. It's www.YvetteWJones.com. Again, www.YvetteWJones.com. Miss Jones, start up with your social media handle so people can follow you.
Awesome. Okay, you can follow me on Twitter at Yvette W. Jones, and on Instagram, Yvette W. Jones, on Facebook. Yvette W. Jones Official is the page on Facebook. You can even go to YouTube and type in Yvette W. Jones as well.
I tell you, for those that are tuned in, this segment has all been about transparency. It's all been about having a dialogue of how can we really be an overcomer? What is forgiveness? How do we go through the process of forgiveness? And if you have a loved one that's incarcerated and soon to come home, such as in my situation, love on your family when they come back. The worst thing I would say is to disown anyone that has gone through a challenge. We all have gone through
Hmm.
challenges, whether you've been in prison or not. There's been something in your history, right? In all of our history that we had to bounce back from, right? So love on your family members through the challenges that they're facing. But I think also, Miss Yvette said so many things about also loving yourself. And I tell you, one of my takeaways is when you talked about you'll learn a new way to shop. You'll learn a new way to shop. That's one of my definitely takeaways from what you were sharing this evening. Before we conclude, Miss Yvette, share with everyone any final words of inspiration you would like to share.
Um, my conclusion today is to know who you are. Just know your worth, know your value, know who you are. And every time you speak, I'm learning this every day, to speak with the big I. And the big I
Mm.
is who created you. I am wonderful. I am blessed. I am highly
Mm.
favored. I can do these things, instead of speaking from a place of a little I, which is your emotions. If you stay out of
Mm.
your emotions and you speak who you really are, the soul of you, that is my
Mm.
inspiration to you guys today, is to be able to do that and birth out what is already in you.
Mm. Wow. There it is. Listen, please share. You may want to know how can you support the Speak Life Poor movement. Share this link. Share this episode. This is a powerful episode. Miss Jones was very transparent, which we appreciate, and that's who we bring on the show. That's who we bring on the show because we want to make sure what we're giving out into the community is potent. One is it helps individuals to transform, but also it allows us to pause for a moment and to look at self. So how, in terms of how we can improve. Once again, go to her website, www.YvetteWJones.com. Follow her on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Again, Instagram is Yvette W. Jones. Same thing for Twitter. And then the Facebook is Yvette W. Jones Official. Okay, this sister is official. She's been through things in her life. She's bringing it raw. She's bringing it real. And again, guys, for listening in, we appreciate you. And don't forget to share this link. And again, continue to speak life to your family, to your friends, in the community, and everywhere you go. And we're going to be back next week with another episode of SLT The Talk. Good night.